In this session, I want to provide you with a tool to help create surplus thinking. And I want you to know it's going to be an incredible tool for you to use, but along the way, I'm going to ask you to do some things that you're going to probably be a little resistant to, or it's going to challenge you. They're not hard, but it's just not the way we tend to like to think. I'm going to ask you to think about things that naturally you're going to suppose are impossible and can't be done. And I want to encourage you to press through those moments, because I need to ask you to think about some real minutia along the way. At the end of the tool is where the result is. So don't get caught up in the hurdles that I present, and just press on. You're going to have a great opportunity. Here's what I would say. By the end of the tool, you might just create 20% of financial resource surplus over a 3-year period that you don't currently have. Okay? So here's a little bit of a premise. Oftentimes, the average church is going to spend 50% of its income on staff, 25% on facility, and another 25% on missions, ministry, and programming. And we can think that the initial 50% on staff is fixed, the facilities expense is fixed, and the only point of measurement we have that we have flexibility is on our missions and ministry line. And that can feel very confining. In truth, 25% is fixed largely, which is your facility. The 50% you spend for staff is really a choice that you make, and I'm pro-staff and understand that. And then the 25% sometimes, just because of missions commitment and denominational commitment, can actually have some fixed feeling expenses in those as well. But I want to go through the lens of the 50% that is staff and the 25% that is missions and ministry and programming. And I want to have the premise that 75% of your resources are flexible. So let's talk about how we view 75% of our resources as flexible, and how do I get to a 20% surplus in revenue and resources over a 3-year period. So here we go. First step, I want you to create an organizational chart, and I want it to be complete all the way from the senior pastor to every single staff member that you have, including part-time facilities workers, part-time childcare workers. I don't want you to include contract labor. I want your full-time, part-time staff members, whatever reimbursements that they have that would be deemed of that office, not for ministry expenses, but for personal expenses, mileage, medical insurance, all of their benefits, taxes. And I want you to create the entire chart from top to bottom, leave no one out. I want you to ask your finance team to provide you with a total number of how much is invested in your staff expense. And when you create this, I want to encourage you not to use names, because it might take you several weeks to complete this, and you wouldn't want to leave this laying around for someone to see, but use titles or tasks to help you understand and know. When you add up all of the staff investment, and I want you to measure it against the established church, on average, spends 50% of its income on its staff and personnel. I want you to see how you're rating against that. Next, I'm going to ask you to go through an exercise to reduce the expense. Now, I want to say again, I'm pro-staff, and this is a part that's a little bit of a hurdle, but I want you to see where we're going at the end. Okay, I promise you're not going to be recommending that you reduce pay or let loose of your staff. I want you to pick a challenging number to reduce your investment by. And the number that I'm going to suggest is 35%. Now, if you're a little higher or a little lower, you adjust it accordingly. No less than 10%. If this number is not a challenge, the tool will not be useful to you. So remember, we're creating a tool, a way of thinking. We're not actually making decisions, okay? So go with it. 35% is the number that I'm going to recommend. Next, set that aside, and I want you to create a list of your core ministries. And by core, I mean these are the things that you would never stop doing because they deliver on your vision. These are the exercises that a church participates in. These are things you would never dream of stopping. Worship, small groups, missions, outreach, service. Oftentimes churches can summarize that in 3 different ways: worship, small groups, and outreach, because missions can be an outreach, and service is implied because it takes a volunteer force to do all of those. The measurement is what qualifies as core is it delivers the results of conversion growth. It delivers the results of discipleship. It delivers the results of people living out their life purpose in their city. Now, as you go through this, other items are going to come to your mind. Some really enjoyable events and activities and ministries that your church loves and does well. I want you to create another list, and I'm going to call that your supporting ministries. All right? So as you think about the ministry activities, even get out your church calendar and run through it, look at your org chart and who does what, and begin to put some as core because they deliver the measurable results towards your vision. And then the other items that support these, but they're not delivering the same results, and put them over here. We're going to use both, but I want you to create those two lists. Now, take your core ministries and begin to assign them to your 35% organizational chart. Let's see how many of the core, critical, deliverable, measurable ministries can be done by more streamlined staff expense. Now, when you do this, it's going to be hard. And you're going to feel like you're forcing a little bit. And there may be some gaps, and you may be thinking, how could we ever do this? That's all right. Make a list of the gaps. These are the things that, I'm doing this, and these are the things that I'm already noticing might not get accomplished or might not get accomplished the way that I think. So we'll talk about that. So create your new ministry structure inside your new 35% organizational chart. Create a list of the challenges or gaps that you see. Now, I also want you to create a list of the great opportunities that might be in front of you. Like you might see a person leading a ministry that before you didn't see, and you think, wow, this has real opportunity to it. And this is real growth for them. And I want you to think about how many of these gaps that you found could potentially be solved by just simplifying the ministry activity, or by creating a process, or by engaging a volunteer team that could smooth that out and make it run more efficiently. So let's not just bail on the tension that we find. Let's think of some creative solutions to it. So we've got a 35% organizational chart at this point. We have our core ministries. We have them aligned. We have some challenges. We've solved a few of the challenges. Now I want you to go to the supporting ministry list. In the supporting ministry list, ask yourself a few questions. Can those supporting ministries somehow be retooled to solve some of the gaps? Or how about, can I really free up some staff and some volunteer and some facility time and some financial resources there and come back and create new systems that help me with my core? Like you may say some of those things we're doing may have had a better day in the past, and now that I see them in comparison, I might want to redeploy all of those resources to make this better. So at this point, a 35% staff, your core, which are your deliverables on your growth, they're inside. Now we're able to really think through all of our investments. If you went with this, what would you really be losing? What risk might you be taking? If we believe that these core were delivering on baptisms and discipleship, there should not be much risk involved. So here's a little bit of a challenge to think through. The older a church becomes, the larger its staff becomes, and the more complex its ministry structure becomes. And it's very difficult to have a conversation about the 50% and the 25%. They can become very territorial even over time. And oftentimes when a church does its budget every year, we kind of stick with the same grid of where we invest and even raise the budget number just a little bit every single year. Then along the way, when pressure begins to come financially because giving isn't reaching to the level that we had hoped or planned on, we don't adjust staff and we don't adjust the 25% of facility expense. Where do we go? We go to our ministries and programming because we believe that's our only true flexible expenses, and we're undermining the advancement of our vision. So here's what I want to encourage you to do. I want to encourage you to give some serious thought to this tool. And what if you set yourself a goal that said, in 3 years, I would like to see a 10% reduction of my expenses, and because we're being more strategic with them, I would like to see a result of 20% or 10% growth over a 3-year period. Look, that's only 3% a year. That's not very much. Only 3% a year would get you to a brand new 20% surplus that you're not currently enjoying. What could you do with a 20% surplus?